This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
It's the sweet sounds of Thandiswa Mazwai. But on this one, she's actually giving some thought in terms of ukuthi sizilibele, ukuthi sizalwa ngobani. And it really pains and hurts. Because growing up, we always were under the impression that you are a representative of the people that raised you. You are a representative of your partner. As soon as you leave home formally and you engage in a marriage, you're a representative of your partner. But seemingly in this day and age, we've lost our spirit. And it really is heartbreaking, to say the least. It's 10 minutes after 2 o'clock. And if you've just joined us, you are a couple of hours late. See, couple, two. Get what I did there? No? Okay, you're a couple of hours late, but fear not. I'm going to make sure that this hour gives you enough reason to come back tomorrow between the hours of 12 until 3. But you don't need to go because we still have plenty more right here on Power 987. It's Power Zone. You can use the hashtag Power Zone across all social media platforms to engage with us. Otherwise, give us a call on 0861 987,000. That's 0861 987,000. We've spoken to Thuto about social media and the influx of information that we get on a daily basis. Now, Thuto joins us, digital media specialist, to assist us with understanding the power of social media, how to utilize social media, and how to lose our dependence. Because at this point, it's safe to say that we are officially codependent on social media, digital platform. Let's get into this conversation. Thuto, thank you so much for your time this morning. A warm welcome to Power 987.
Thank you so much and good morning.
Thuto, I think, you wake up or you go to bed when social media is a buzz. You probably pass out and you're hoping to wake up the next morning and get the full scope or different perspective that people have commented and the opinions that they've shared as well, only to wake up to a global outage.
Yes.
What does this mean for us as South Africans? Is there a frenzy that goes on? Are we uncomfortable looking at the statistics of people that really depend on social media?
Yes, no, of course. There will always be like some sort of frenzy because we are extremely dependent on social medias, and days like the day that X was down kind of show us how dependent we actually are. On a normal day-to-day basis, your user is checking their social media about 58 times per day, and there's always content that is being filtered through depending on what your searches are like and what you're doing and what your interests are like, and the platform is almost catered towards your liking. So when you kind of don't have that anymore and you don't have the option to even log in, let alone get direct messages or to be served information, it does kind of make you panic because it almost feels like the world has kind of stopped for a bit.
It does. How does one actually realize when they are dependent on social media? What are the signs that one needs to look out for that are really a huge red flag and indicating that the direction that you are taking means now you are officially dependent on this digital platform?
So I think you can look at a lot of things. So like I say, you're probably checking your social media 58 times, and the times that we're in, we have quite improved devices that almost allow you to see how much time you're spending on which platforms and what you're doing with your time on your phone. So that could always direct you and show you what you're doing. But a lot of the times, not just individuals, but businesses are also very reliant on social media. You're relying on it on like real-time updates on what's happening at an event that is taking place for brands. You're relying on it to make sure and understand what is the hourly news that is happening, what is happening on the roads. Is there any traffic? Is there any breaking news that is happening, whether it is on a global spectrum or just regionally or just in your country? So all of those things help you to actually understand that you are super reliant on social media, not just in your day-to-day, but even on an hourly basis, because you're going in for check-ins, you're going in even in like your 5-minute tea breaks that you have. So yeah, that could show you quite a lot that you are very dependent.
Let's also just maybe address the idea of these outages and look at the cause of these outages. And how often one should anticipate these outages, because it's all at the control of a bigger sub at the end of the day, and anything could happen. We could all lose it in a split second, where we wake up and there's automatically no platform such as X. I mean, for crying out loud, Mixit is no longer available.
That's true. That's very true. It's actually really good that you mentioned that, because we are very reliant on it, but I think a lot of platforms should necessarily not be dependent on a single data center, right? They should be based globally, in a sense, ideally, because of the type of infrastructure and the things that we have in place to ensure that if a single data center goes down, it is not affecting users or the platform on a global spectrum or basis. So that really should not happen. And like you're saying, Mixit is now gone, and we could wake up and X is gone. Already when X was down, you had, it almost allowed other social media platforms like Threads to gain bigger reach, to broaden its capacity, even though they may not have the capacity at this moment to carry over everyone from X. But it is kind of showing them that there is a need for other social medias to kind of grow and move up within the social media ranking, so that there's almost space for everybody to be on the cake and have a piece of the cake. So we could wake up and there is probably no X anymore. And it also allows you to kind of start questioning the reliability of these platforms that we have, not just in the infrastructure or the CEOs or the actual platform, but in how it's designed and its existence altogether.
I don't want us to speak solely on individuals. I want us to tap into also businesses. You know, there are businesses that really highly depend on the X app, or maybe any social app or digital platform for that matter, with many users unable to access basic functions like you're logging in or maybe sending messages during the X outage. Do you think maybe this could be an alarming call for individuals and businesses to rethink maybe their dependence on a single platform?
Yes, for sure. I do agree. I think X being down, or any platform at any time even being down, and relying on a single platform does kind of show you that you are too dependent, and you shouldn't actually be that dependent. So even if you're a business or an organization that is relying, for example, or was reliant on X for real-time communication with either your customers or stakeholders or anyone of that sort, it kind of presents a practical dilemma about the platform dependency on its own. So the entire incident kind of shows you that businesses or organizations, especially them over individuals, need to kind of have a contingency plan and have alternative communication channels so that they can mitigate things like this happening and impacting any business modules and ideas and goals that they have for that day, because it does not actually or affect them just for that day. It unfortunately has an impact on their overall goals, whether it's their return on investment now falling or them losing actual money because they actually cannot recover from that gap of not being present during that time.
In your professional capacity as someone who works in digital media, what sort of advice would you give for brands and users to stay proactive in case of future digital disruptions, particularly and especially when news and business operations are so tied to online platforms? I mean, we've practically moved from newspapers and we are consuming information from the internet itself. What would you say as an advice or maybe a guideline towards some of the disruptions that can happen at any given time?
Well, because I'm digital, I would be devastated that there's no internet anymore. Probably not have a job anymore. But what I would actually say is that don't solely rely on a single platform to be able to speak to your brand or your campaign's messaging. You should have a foolproof media plan in place that utilizes, whether it is print, whether it is radio, whether it is out-of-home media, whether it is digital media. So have almost like a full funnel plan that kind of allows every part and every user that you have within your brand to still be plugged in and to still be connected and live, no matter if you aren't technically live at some point, because you do also cater, even in a foolproof media plan that is not solely on a single platform, you still kind of cater to certain hours that you aren't live for whatever reason, based on that brand's safety guidelines. But I would say have a foolproof media plan that is just going to ensure that your media goals or your campaign's goals still give you a return on investment. And just because something is not going right at that time, or is not working out at that time, it doesn't mean that the brand or the organization or the business is fallen flat altogether, because they actually have plugged in other forms of social media or other forms of media and branding and advertising and marketing that will still make sure that they're still kind of live regardless of what may be happening on a single platform.
Earlier on, myself and the producer were speaking about airtime and calls. And I think maybe what social media has done has really made us have, and I don't know how, because this might sound so contradictory. We now lack engagement, but it's okay for us to engage on socials. You find people sitting around during braai times on their phones. And I think that's not the only pattern that we are beginning to see. Are there more patterns that are visibly coming to light that we need to take note of?
Well, I think from a social perspective, there are quite a lot of more patterns that we can take note of. We do tend to become a little bit unengaged in terms of being present in moments, and we are more socially plugged in. But I don't think that's necessarily always a bad thing. We are moving more towards a digital world. I think if we just have a good balance of the things that we are doing, we will still be able to be a community that is still thoroughly engaged in everything that we do, still being able to connect, because we still allow ourselves to connect in other moments where even if you're saying, you're at a braai, you could be sitting down for a moment and everyone's on their phones, but there's still a time where other people at some point in the night or some point in the day will kind of leave their phones and part ways a little bit with their phones and actually have real conversations. And even when they're probably even having these conversations, it could be people referring to things that they've actually even seen on social media or they read on social media. So I think we can't necessarily move away from connecting and or even creating connections from or based on the things that we almost get or are fed from social media.
We've touched on adults, we've touched on businesses, but I think one thing we haven't touched on is children. We are seeing more and more children being exposed, whether it is their parents taking videos or themselves using the phone to take videos and upload them on these digital platforms. Is there a certain pattern that we are picking up from children when it comes to social media? And when there is an outage, for children particularly, are there any certain behavior traits that are often highlighted during this period of an outage?
Well, there could be at times. I think if you are a parent that maybe doesn't necessarily govern how your child consumes media, then you will kind of see patterns where you have your kids maybe throwing tantrums, or your kids are just not allowing you to kind of give them the room to do other things outside of be on their phone. So I think the responsibility and the patterns of a child when platforms are not there or certain they don't have access to the digital world, those are patterns that are created by the adults that they are with, because they've created room for them to be very codependent on having their tablet around or having their phone around, and things like that. So I think if they continue to kind of have that balance between the real world and the outside world, then I think we'll be relatively fine. But we also in a space and a time in our lives where even if you're in primary or high school, I think a lot of the homework that these kids are doing these days need you to be doing research all the time. So it can be extremely frustrating, especially given the amount of time that X was down and also given that this is a second outage in a space of like 2-3 months. So it can become extremely frustrating, not only just for adults, but for kids as well, who are relying on social media or certain platforms to even gather homework for the next day or homework for that day.
I think what's frustrating the most is the idea of not knowing when your connectivity is going to come back. It's one thing being aware, and we find that in most cases when there is going to be an outage, we don't formally get a notice that says they're undergoing some sort of upgrade or change of anything. It's an instinct thing that happens there and then. And we also fall short of the information as to when it will be back up and running. I think the responsibility for such things is of the digital platform to inform us and give us an indication. Yeah. However, in this case, they have failed us one too many times. And you speak about an outage of a space of a very short period of time. Have you ever maybe noticed some sort of pattern or trajectory that could give us an indication as to how often these might happen, or is it really just a spur of the moment?
Honestly, I would say it really is just a spur of the moment, especially when it comes to an outage, an update to something completely different, because you still have the functions and accessibility to the actual platform. You may just not have certain features at that time, but once you do get the update, then you kind of get upgraded. But in terms of an outage, you can't actually decide or see when that could be coming or happening at any point. And I think, like you're saying, it also becomes extremely frustrating when it took half of the day, like a working day, 8 hours or something, to actually acknowledge, not even to say how they're going to be coming back or anything of the sort, but to simply acknowledge that, the platform is actually down and this is what we're experiencing. So you still even don't have kind of an idea of when it may come back, if it is coming back, but just an acknowledgement with on its own, that already just bypasses like the industry standards on its own, because there is no best practice in there. You're not being considerate of your consumers on the actual platform and the people that are investing in the platform at that time. So I think the platform on its own, as well as the owner of the platform, it does warrant them to receive a certain amount of scrutiny because they actually aren't being considerate of anyone on the platform at that moment and space and time.
Thuto, thank you for your time this morning. A great chat indeed, and I'm hoping that more and more South Africans could maybe seek help when it comes to really being dependent on the devices, which is also known as nomophobia, added to my list.
Your list of long.
Yes. Thuto, thank you so much for your time.
You get cured soon. I hope you get cured soon.
Thank you. And that is Thuto. A great conversation indeed as we wrap it up, giving us the bigger picture of what an ex-global shutdown looks like, some of the frustrations that go on in family, households, children, businesses. It's quite interesting to find out that some people suffer from not touching or having their phones. A friend of mine was on a call and she was asking me where her phone is. I think that is just another sign of nomophobia. It's 2:30. On the other side of that, we'll get our Monday devotion with Bishop Silo. And we're going to get some energy and motivation to kickstart this week off on a very high note and understand that our bigger power of whatever it is or whoever it is that you believe in only works when you believe.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.